Hello. Good morning. Why is it? I think my screen's a little blurry. I'm sorry. My computer monitor is dirty and I don't have nothing to wipe it up with. I don't know why. I keep getting fingerprints all over there. Hey, Jennifer. So glad to see you here. I'm glad you made it too, Susan. Oh, that sounds amazing, Meredith. Enjoy. I want to go to the beach so bad, but there's a certain cute thing that keeps us from going to the beach because he throws up when he rides. And I don't want to leave him in a kennel because he's old and I'm afraid he'll not do well because he's getting to be an old man. Aren't you, buddy? All right. Well, good morning. Happy June 15th. All right. Oh, I like this story. I'm going to read about Elisha. But first, Elijah is taken into heaven. 2 Kings 2, 1 through 18. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were traveling from Gilgal, and Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went down together to Bethel. The group of prophets from Bethel came to Elisha and asked him, "Did you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Of course I know," Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Jericho." But Elisha replied again, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together to Jericho. Then the group of prophets from Jericho came to Elisha and asked him, "Did you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Of course I know," Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to the Jordan River." But again, Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together. 50 men from the group of prophets also went and watched from a distance, as Elijah and Elisha stopped beside the Jordan River. Then Elijah folded his cloak together and struck the water with it. The river divided, and the two of them went across on dry ground. When they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken away." And Elisha replied, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor." "You have asked a difficult thing," Elisha replied. "If you see me when I am taken from you, then you will get your request. But if not, then you won't." As they were walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared, drawn by horses of fire. It drove between the two men, separating them. Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel." And as they disappeared from sight, Elisha tore his clothes in distress. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. He struck the water with Elijah's cloak and cried out, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" Then the river divided, and Elisha went across. When the group of prophets from Jericho saw from a distance what happened, they exclaimed, "Elijah's spirit rests upon Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Sir," they said, "just say the word, and 50 of our strongest men will search the wilderness for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has left him on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elisha said, "don't send them." But they kept urging him until they shamed him into agreeing, and finally said, "All right, send them." So 50 men searched for 3 days, but did not find Elijah. Elisha was still at Jericho when they returned. "Didn't I tell you not to go?" he asked. Elisha's first miracles. 2 Kings 2:19 through 25. Excuse me. One day the leaders of the town of Jericho visited Elisha. "We have a problem, my lord," they told him. "This town is located in pleasant surroundings, as you can see, but the water is bad and the land is unproductive." Elisha said, "Bring me a new bowl with salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring and supplied the town with water and threw salt into it. And he said, "This is what the Lord says: I have purified this water. It will no longer cause death or infertility." And the water has remained pure ever since, just as Elisha said. Elisha left Jericho and went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, a group of boys from the town began mocking and making fun of him. "Go away, Baldy," they chanted. "Go away, Baldy." Elisha turned around and looked at them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of them. From there, Elisha went to Mount Carmel and finally returned to Samaria. Elisha helps a poor widow. 2 Kings 4:17, 1 through 17. 1 through 7. One day, a widow of a member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come, threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves." Excuse me. "What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all, except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elisha said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into your house with your son and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." She did as she was told. Her son kept bringing jars to him, and she kept I can't. My book apart here. And she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." Elisha and the woman from Shunem, 2 Kings 4:8 through 37. One day, Elisha went to the town of Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there. My eyes are crossing for some reason. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to come to her home for a meal. After that, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for something to eat. She said to her husband, "I am sure this man who stops in from time to time is a holy man of God. Let's build a small room for him on the roof and furnish it with a bed and a table, a chair, and a lamp. Then he will have a place to stay whenever he comes by." One day, Elisha returned to Shunem, and he went to his upper room to rest. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Tell the woman from Shunem I want to speak to her." When she appeared, Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tell her we appreciate the kind concern you have shown us. What can we do for you? Can we put in a good word for you to the king or to the commander of the army?" "No," she replied. "My family takes good care of me." Later, Elisha asked Gehazi, "What can we do for her?" Gehazi replied, "She doesn't have a son, and her husband is an old man." "Call her back again," Elisha told him. When the woman returned, Elisha said to her as she stood in the doorway, "Next year at this time you will be holding a son in your arms." "No, my lord," she cried. "Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that." But sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant, and at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. One day, when her child was older, he went out to help his father, who was working with the harvesters. Suddenly, he cried out, "My head hurts, my head hurts." His father said to one of the servants, "Carry him home to his mother." So the servant took him home, and his mother held him on her lap. But around noontime, he died. She carried him up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and left him there. She sent a message to her husband, "Send one of the servants and a donkey so that I can hurry to the man of God and come right back." "Why go today?" he asked. "It is neither a new moon festival or a Sabbath." But she said, "It will be all right." So she saddled the donkey and said to the servant, "Hurry, don't slow down unless I tell you to." As she approached the man of God at Mount Carmel, Elisha saw her in the distance. He said to Gehazi, "Look, the woman from Shunem is coming. Run out to meet her and ask her if everything is all right with you, your husband, and your child." "Yes," the woman told Gehazi, "everything is fine." But when she came to the man of God at the mountain, she fell to the ground before him and caught hold of his feet. Gehazi began to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is deeply troubled, but the Lord has not told me what it is." Then she said, "Did I ask you for a son, my lord? And didn't I say, 'Don't deceive me and get my hopes up'?" Then Elisha said to Gehazi, "Get ready to travel. Take my staff and go. Don't talk to anyone along the way. Go quickly and lay the staff on the child's face." But the boy's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives, you yourself live, I won't go home unless you go with me." So Elisha returned with her. Gehazi hurried on ahead and laid the staff on the child's face, but nothing happened. There was no sign of life. He returned to meet Elisha and told him, "The child is still dead." When Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead, laying there on the prophet's bed. He went in alone and shut the door behind him and prayed to the Lord. Then he lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. And as he stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. Elisha got up and walked back and forth across the room once, and then stretched himself out again on the child. This time the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha summoned Gehazi. "Call the child's mother," he said, and when she came in, Elisha said, "Here, take your son." She fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her arms and carried him downstairs. Miracles during a famine. 2 Kings 4:38 through 44. Elisha now returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. One day, as a group of prophets was seated before him, he said to his servant, "Put a large pot on the fire and make some stew for the rest of the group." One of the young men went out to the field to gather herbs and came back with a pocketful of wild gourds. He shredded them and put them into a pot without realizing they were poisonous. Some of the stew was served to the men, but after they had eaten a bite or two, they cried out, "Man of God, there's poison in this stew," so they would not eat it. Elisha said, "Bring me some flour." Then he threw it in the pot and said, "Now it's all right. Go ahead and eat." And then it did not harm them. One day, a man from Baal Shalisha brought the man of God a sack of fresh grain and 20 loaves of barley bread made from the first grain of his harvest. Elisha said, "Give it to the people so they can eat." "What?" his servant exclaimed. "Feed 100 people with only this?" But Elisha repeated, "Give it to the people so they can eat. For this is what the Lord says, everyone will eat, and there will even be some left over." And when they gave it to the people, there was plenty for all and some left over, just as the Lord had promised. I love the miracles. I love hearing about them. They're just funsies. I think they're fun to read about. All right. We are starting chapter 4 in Breaking Free from Body Shame. We are on page 67. Your body does not belong to the world. I've heard of people doing weird things on Ambien, the sleeping pill. Some people Ambien eat or Ambien email. That wasn't that. This wasn't that. I did send the email in the middle of the night, but it wasn't pharmaceutically induced. I think I was just desperate. Something must have happened as I slept. Something that illuminated just how frenzied my soul felt. Who knows where I got her email address or what the first message even said. I think I just brazenly begged for help. I'd emailed Alyssa Keaton, founder and director of Revelation Wellness, and I told her that I was desperate for some shift in my body and the way I viewed it. I was fed up with how it looked, but I was also exasperated by how I felt. Not physically, but spiritually. I was in pain profoundly. I was at the end of myself. I asked her if she'd coach me in my health and fitness journey because I needed help. The very next day, she replied and said yes, but she wanted to know she'd have access to my heart in the process as well. More than that, she wanted God to have access to my heart. We started a mentoring relationship that week. She walked me through the program she had developed for people to get and stay free, which involved a ton of spiritual work. The physical work just followed where our hearts were. The first week, the workouts I was doing were intimidating and left me sore, but by the third and fourth week, I was moving in liberty and enjoying finding out how much truth I could stretch into as my body took on new challenges as well. I experienced wild freedom under Alyssa's care, and I can't thank God enough for what he did in that season. When we finished several weeks of intensive one-on-one coaching, Alyssa and I stayed friends. She sent me on to keep ringing the freedom bell with my body. Sometimes she'd text me and ask, "Are you still on the freedom train?" Sometimes I'd tell her it was dragging me. Sometimes I'd tell her I was riding on top of it, screaming for everyone else to get on. Anyone who has experienced years of abusing their body knows you can agree with freedom in your brain, but not feel it in your bones. Sometimes I felt free, but after my work with Alyssa, I always knew I was free, and that made all the difference. The freer I felt, the freer I acted. When I started working with Alyssa, I was occasionally exercising, maybe running a little. I had never felt super fit or athletic, but God was rewriting and renaming my body, and suddenly this new world was open to me. I couldn't get enough of it. Moving was no longer a punishment or a moment in my day that left me wallowing in shame. I felt at home in my skin, not because of how it looked, but because I was spending so much time connected to my body. Endorphins were flooding through me, and I was accessing the God given desire to eat food that was good for me. I joined a gym. I trained for half marathons. I did off the wall workouts like aerial yoga, where I hung from silk strings attached to the ceiling. When you don't know how, when you don't know you're free, you don't hang from silk strings attached to the ceiling, you know? Everything was changing, and Alyssa got to bear witness to it up close and personal. All right, I'm going to stop there. All right. We actually I have been incredibly blessed this week by people, amazing people in my life that know authors. And I have been able to secure 3 new books / devotionals. Our next book is going to be called Good Words. And I've already read it once, or I've audiobooked it, and it's excellent. We're going to read that next. And then after that, we have 2 devotionals to read. So we are set probably through all of 2025. And I will share the books and where to get them and links soon. But yes, he does. It's amazing. He always does provide. Just when I get worried, like, how am I possibly going to find somebody else that allows me to read their book live? Someone does. And then that sets me up because, you know, I think one author said I could read any of her books, and she has 5, you guys. So I could be set for the next 3 or 4 years, honestly. And then after that, I already have permission to read Christine Cain's daily devotional. We could read that again. So I think we're good for a very long time, and I'm incredibly pleased by that. So, all right, my friends, let's go ahead and end in a word of prayer this morning. God, our Father, I thank you so much for this opportunity to gather together, this time to spend in your word, listening to and being part of the miracles and reading about Elisha and all the amazing miracles. I enjoy them. And I just thank you for the stories this morning that we've read. And I thank you for the promises in your word and the promise that the reading of your word and being part of it does not return void, God. And that is being displayed day after day in my life. God, I pray as we go through our day, you will just help us to keep our eyes focused on you, keep our eyes open to what you have for us, listening to your voice as we go through our day, and sharing the love of Christ wherever we go, being a picture of the women you want us to be wherever we go, loving on others and being kind and generous and just being a reflection of the love we have in our lives forward. In your precious name I pray, amen. All right, my sweet friends, thank you so much for joining me. I'm headed out to the farmer's market this morning, so I'm not going to be live. I'm going to go get my veggie on. I need some yummy vegetables. I watched a documentary last night about mass-produced vegetables, and now I absolutely have to go to the farmer's market. I don't recommend watching those type of documentaries, so I'm going to go get fresh veggies and make myself I like to have I really like to have a bowl of chopped veggies in the fridge that I can eat kind of like an appetizer. And I've been eating fermented veggies for a while. And while I love them, I'm getting a little tired of them as my veggies. You want me to go live at the farmer's market, Faith? Maybe I could do that. I get a little nervous going live in front of other people. I'm afraid they'll look at me funny. Be like, who she thinks she is going live at the farmer's market? I get nervous. But maybe if I get nervy, maybe I'll go live at the farmer's market. Maybe I'll do that. All right, you guys. I love you so much. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you back tomorrow for more devotions and maybe live from